The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Jason Hillier. I'm a sales director and expedition leader here at Arctic Kingdom. And today we'll be talking about Arctic Kingdom's autumn polar bear adventures. For the duration of this webinar, you will be muted, but you do have an opportunity to ask some questions. So if you care to ask some questions or have a chat, please use the chat window or the question window, which you'll see on your control panel there. And if time allows, at the end of the webinar, I intend to answer the questions. And certainly if I don't have time to answer during the webinar, one of us here at Arctic Kingdom will get back to you in very short order with some answers to your questions. So without further ado, we'll jump right in. So for those that don't know much about us, I want to talk just a few moments about Arctic Kingdom. We are absolutely the global leader in land-based travel. So we specialize in very small group experiences exclusively within the Canadian Arctic. That is our core competency. We are headquartered in the Arctic. We live and breathe the Arctic. We just don't play in the Arctic. We actually work here as well, virtually year-round. We've been working in the Arctic since 1999. We are the originators, the pioneers of the Arctic Safari. And unlike any other polar bear tour that one might find anywhere else in the world, we operate them virtually year-round. So at Arctic Kingdom, we like to say we actually have a polar bear tour for every single season of the year. But today, and for the next 35-40 minutes, we'll be talking about two different experiences that Arctic Kingdom offers in the autumn. Okay, so autumn in the Arctic. Why are we talking about the autumn in the Arctic? Well, frankly, it's a very special time of year in the Arctic, and particularly in Western Hudson Bay. So in Western Hudson Bay, the local polar bear population, which consists of approximately in and around 1,000 bears, are basically migrating up the coast, waiting for Hudson Bay to freeze over so that they can go out onto the ice to hunt their favorite prey, which is seals. So unlike other bear species, polar bears don't hibernate in winter. That's actually their very active season. They're out on the sea ice and they're looking for their prey, whether it's the bearded seal, whether it's the harp seal or the ring seal. That's what we're there to capture, that amazing migration as these bears move north along the coast. For those that don't know, the worldwide population of polar bears is estimated in and around 26,000 animals, and we have actually 60% of the world's populations of polar bears actually within Canada. And Hudson Bay, Western Hudson Bay, is a stable population and at a very healthy number of in and around 1,000 bears. So why would one travel to Western Hudson Bay in autumn? First and foremost, it's a very good time of year to have reliable sightings. We have the ability to see polar bears from not afar, but from being very close to them, based on where our different trips are situated, and the ability to have that up close, intimate, safe experience is second to none. Another way that we like to say that we have an amazing opportunity to see these bears is we see them during the day and during the night, but we have the ability to see them potentially with northern lights dancing in the skies above us. So that's another great reason to be traveling up to the Hudson Bay area in autumn. And these are absolutely authentic tundra experiences, meaning we are on the Arctic tundra. So we have transitioned from the boreal forest, from the taiga, into the true Arctic tundra above the tree line. We have not only the opportunity to see polar bears, of course, but there are other species of animals in this area at this time of year, and there's a very strong chance that we'll see snowy owl, Arctic hare, We have seen wolverine, caribou, gyr falcon, and other species of animals on these trips. So fingers crossed that we have the ability to do that this year as well. Through this webinar, you're going to see a lot of great images. All of these images have been taken on this from our autumn experiences, and you know, I've had clients standing next to me with their iPhones, and I've had clients standing next to me with their massive 600 millimeter, you know, professional lenses, and both clients are getting amazing photographs. So we have a great opportunity to see bears up close, and these trips will, you know, basically offer a complete range of experiences to whether it's the professional photographer to the semi-pro photographer or just a hobby photographer. It's just a great opportunity to see bears up close. So what trips am I talking about? Well, we have two. Our polar bear migration fly-in photo safari, a little bit of a mouthful there, but is our trip that is a trip that we run from October to November. And our private polar bear cabin in a separate location offers a very similar experience, but obviously on a bespoke and custom level. And we'll talk a bit about these now for the remainder of the webinar, and we'll dig into the details and what to expect from these two different experiences. So first, let's talk about the polar bear migration fly-in photo safari. This is the program that we've affectionately titled Walking with the Bears. This is a cabin-based photo safari. It is off the grid. It is truly authentic Tundra experience in the sense that we are very remote, miles from anyone, and we have a great opportunity to photograph these polar bears from the ground level. So unlike other operators, we don't use any type of vehicles. We don't use sort of the Tundra buggy or the Polar Rover or any of those larger sort of bus-like vehicles. We are truly walking with the animals. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But what that gives us is just an amazing perspective to get very close to the animals, to observe natural behavior, and to get pictures from an angle that, frankly, you just don't see all that often. We start running this trip in mid-October, and it runs right up until usually in around November 20th. That's usually been when we're wrapping up, anywhere between 7 to 8 departures on an annual basis. We do have very limited availability left for this year. We're expecting an amazing year this year, almost completely sold out. So just sort of a little plug there that if you are thinking or considering this experience this year, I would suggest that you reach out to us very soon, and some contact information will be on the last slide for you. So where is this trip taking place? This trip, as you can see from the map, is north of Churchill, Manitoba. The polar bear cabins, which is denoted sort of in between, sort of the middle dot there, I guess, is what we call Polar Bear Alley. It's on the west coast of Hudson Bay. It's actually in Nunavut, so it's not in Manitoba. It's 110 kilometers south of the nearest community, which is Arviat. This trip originates in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and after a short flight to Churchill, we meet our clients in Churchill Airport, and we put them on our private plane, our chartered aircraft that will bring you and them, your clients, to the polar bear cabins. It's very simple to get to, and we make it very easy. We make it very accessible. It's a commercial flight from Winnipeg to Churchill. Our single turbo Otter aircraft is chartered exclusively for Arctic Kingdom. It's awaiting you at the Churchill Airport, and we have someone who will meet you at Churchill Airport, assist you in the transfer to the aircraft, and then you're off to the cabins. The journey to the cabins in and itself is pretty amazing. So depending on the weather conditions, we may be flying low or flying high, but regardless, it's a great experience because you can actually leave the boreal forest and you see the entire landscape transition from spruce trees and evergreen trees into a taiga, which is the thinning of the trees with many lakes and rivers, into the true Arctic tundra, so above the tree line. So in a 50-minute flight, you're actually experiencing 3 different ecosystems, which is pretty impressive. Let's talk a little bit about the accommodations. These are the polar bear cabins. There is an electric fence that surrounds the compound. And so what that does is provide a great degree of safety, certainly. It's a deterrent for the polar bears to approach us. And at the same time allows photographers to virtually photograph right through the fence and to provide that unparalleled access to these animals. We have 4 sleep cabins. Each cabin has an ensuite washroom with a private shower. There's a common dining room and lounge. And it's literally with just, as you can probably see from the picture, all in proximity, very close proximity to one another. So from the sleep cabin to the dining room lounge, it's literally a 10-second walk. So everything is very conveniently located that way. The cabins, as you remember from the map that we just saw, are north of Churchill, south of the community of Arviat, and we're just south of a major river called the Jelini River. And that's a little bit of a roadblock for the bears, so it actually prevents them from migrating too far north, and so they hold up a little bit in the area. So we're in the prime location, and we have a prime opportunity to see these bears as they're literally walking by our camp. As I mentioned earlier, the polar bear cabin experience, I think, is like no other experience out there. We can see polar bears both day and night because we are out there 24/7. We don't go out to where the bears are and come back. At the end of the day, we're in their environment the entire time we are there. We do have the ability to take short hikes and walks out on the tundra. We can travel north or we can travel south. All of those walks and hikes are guided hikes, and they're generally never more than an hour or two. They're pretty easy walks, actually, because the ground is just very flat, very level. And they're always guided by Inuit guides or expedition leaders. And so we have an interpretive aspect to the walk as well. And the goal of the walk is to hopefully encounter some wildlife. So we may very well be encountering a bear out on the land away from the cabin. I talked about Northern Lights. Well, I think this picture does a great job of sort of summing up what one of the experiences while seeing Northern Lights could be at the cabin. Northern Lights are quite possible every single evening at the cabin. Obviously, it does depend on conditions. The atmospheric conditions, such as cloud cover, will determine whether it's a great night of watching Northern Lights or not. But it's very possible to see them every night that you are there. And obviously, that's always a great show and a great way to wrap up the day after a beautiful dinner, prepared by an executive chef. We have the ability to sit back and watch some Northern Lights, take some pictures, and we're happy to provide photography tips for those that are not familiar with photographing Aurora Borealis or Northern Lights. We as expedition leaders love to get out there with our tripods and take some great shots of Northern Lights as well. Something you just never get tired of. So I talked a little bit about this already, but safely viewing and photographing polar bears from behind this fence, I think is pretty amazing. The low vantage point that you can gain, literally, as you can sort of see from this image here, lying, I think actually this photographer may have been lying on the ground and taking this shot, is different from many photographs that you'll see of polar bears. If you're on the internet and looking for polar bear images, more often than not, they're taken with an overhead angle, meaning that they're taken from a cruise ship, or they're taken from a Tundra buggy or something similar to that, one of those polar bear viewing vehicles that are used in Churchill. We only had 8 clients at any given time in this cabin complex. And more often than not, we're gaining images and view vantages like this that are just that I think unparalleled and really, really special. It goes without saying that we're on the ground and we have a great opportunity to walk alongside polar bears on the tundra and certainly within the cabin. So that's what really makes it, I think, really special and unique. Just a couple shots again of that amazing vantage point that one can get at the cabins. It's having that ground cover basically from the lower vantage point, I think provides some great shots. So what can one expect when at the cabins? Well, I sort of saying this ad nauseum, but wildlife viewing from the ground, we have the potential to see different family units of polar bears. So whether it's a polar bear mother and cubs, this year's cubs or yearlings, we have the ability to, we've seen brothers and siblings and sister brother polar bear combinations, ones that have just recently weaned from their mother. We've seen some sparring happening around the cabin, so that always makes for a great photography opportunity. But it's not just polar bears as well. So sometimes the Arctic fox will be the star attraction. They're extremely animated, and we have a great potential to see them more often than not every day. So we've been lucky to see snowy owl, Arctic hare, pine marten, wolverine, caribou in this area as well. So we never know exactly what's going to be there until we get there, of course, and every year is always a little different. As I mentioned, northern lights are quite possible every single night, and we certainly hope that that's the case. Temperature-wise, although it may be autumn, we're truly in a winter-like conditions. And so the temperatures will range from -5 to -20 on a daily basis while we're up there. The later we get into the year, the colder it is, with temperatures reaching consistently -10 to -20 in the November timeframe. We have, anywhere from 8 to 10 hours of daylight, so lots of time to get some great shots of bears. And of course, that sunrise and sunset light that seems to hang around in the Arctic forever, just again, it allows for some amazing shots to be taken. We do recommend our Arctic polar clothing package. If you don't have the right equipment, we'll suit you up in the exact same clothing and gear that our expeditionary staff are using, so you'll know that you'll be warm and dry the whole time that you're there. So private polar bear viewing. Let's talk a little bit about our other experience. The private polar bear cabin is the perfect solution, the perfect experience for small family groups of 4 or couples. And the reason I say that is because everything is self-contained within one newly built cabin. There are 2 bedrooms in the private polar bear cabin. There is a queen bed configuration, in one bedroom, and then there's 2 twin beds in a bunk bed configuration in the second bedroom. The living room area, the dining room and kitchen are all attached to that, to the bedroom complex with a private washroom, and the guides are connected by a breezeway in a separate area of the cabin to give you complete privacy, but at the same time, the degree of safety in that everyone is together. This is a completely private trip. It's guided by a private expedition leader, private chef, and local Inuit guides. And we are available to take private bookings in October and November for this year. So this map may look a little familiar to you, but in this map here, you're seeing that the private polar bear cabin's just a little further north of our polar bear cabin experience, where we have 4 sleep cabins versus the 1. And this cabin is approximately 20 kilometers south of Arviat. How do we get to the cabin? Well, there's a couple different options. We have the option to bring you by a private single turbo otter charter flight. This is the same aircraft that we use for our other polar bear experience, but we're able to obviously purpose it for private charter flights if need be, as it is our dedicated aircraft for the time that we are in the Hudson Bay area in October and November. As well, there are commercial flights that travel from Winnipeg into Churchill, and then from Churchill into Arviat on a daily basis. So that's another option as well. So just using scheduled flights through a commercial carrier is another way and means to get to the private polar bear cabin. If you were to opt for the commercial flight, what that allows us to do, or what that means that we will do, is that we will then transfer you from the Arviat airport to the cabin by a snowmobile. If you were to choose the private single turbo otter route, we actually would land right next to the cabin. So you would step off the plane and literally be at the cabin. So just an outside shot of that cabin, just to give you some context. It is a newly built cabin. It's only a couple of years old. And I mentioned it does have a private washroom around in it. And we do have, once again, that unobtrusive electric fence for that degree of safety that surrounds the cabin complex, so that we can get out and comfortably walk around with a degree and measure of protection as well. So the private polar bear cabin experience affords us a very similar type viewing experience to the other cabins, but obviously at a very much more intimate basis. We will do guided walks, hikes on the tundra in search of wildlife. We will have snowmobiles at our avail in order to be able to do a drive it on the land if we wanted to as well. But ultimately the goal is to have that amazing polar bear viewing experience out on the land with boots on the ground, and that's what this cabin complex can afford you. Just like the other polar bear migration fly and safari, we do have northern lights, and again, conditions permitting, we may very well have them every single evening that we are there. This cabin complex comes with a private chef, so that means that we can cater a menu to you or your family's needs. And we can basically cater to almost any single dietary requirement, and we're happy to have that discussion with you. The itinerary here is customizable, in the meaning that we can add layers to it, such as a town tour in Arviat or extending your stay in Churchill. We can do snowmobile trips, which are optional, and we can even do a helicopter tour. Again, optional layers or optional activities and experiences that one can have to enhance that private polar bear cabin experience. So what can one expect? Well, definitely wildlife viewings. The goal, again, in being at this cabin complex is to have a similar viewing experience, in that we are viewing these animals from the ground up, and the exact same species that we may see at the other cabins may very well be present here, with a greater tendency or I should say probability of seeing caribou. That's kind of the one little differentiator there. But we have just as good a chance to see Arctic fox, snowy owl, again, Arctic hare, the gear falcon, and even possibly wolverine. Some great shots of some polar bears approaching the cabin complex. Again, giving you, some water in the background, some nice ice and snow, but that ground level vantage point, I think, is really what sets these images apart. So a mother with 2 cubs and a mother with a yearling cub here. So cubs are usually born in the January timeframe. So this cub here is it's basically only 9-10 months old, and its weaning will be with its mother for a couple of years at least, if not longer. And we have a great opportunity to see those bears as they move north with their mothers, and we quite regularly see mother and cubs on these trips. Similar climatic conditions, in that temperatures will be from -5 to -20 Celsius. Again, a little bit colder potentially in the later time frame, meaning later November. Similar daylight hours, 8 to 10 hours. So we do recommend that polar clothing rental package. And you can see from this picture here, this family of 4 who are at our private polar bear cabin are using our expedition parkas. And if you look closely at this picture, you'll see that they're just wearing their regular street pants. So something tells me they may have rushed out of their cabin maybe in around lunchtime or dinner time to have this amazing view of a polar bear mother with her cub. Doesn't seem like they're quite kitted out to be standing around too long, but you never know what's going to happen when you look out the window sometimes. So you need to take full advantage of the situation. So how does one book one of our experiences? Well, I think it's very simple. By contacting your travel advisor or simply by contacting Arctic Kingdom directly, we're able to talk to you about the experience certainly in much more depth than I'm able to provide to you here or in 30 minutes. And we can talk about availability, and what one can expect from the overall experience. And this contact information that you'll be looking for is right here on this slide. So I'll pause just for a moment for you to record that. So I would like to thank you so much for your time. This is it's been a pleasure talking to you, and hopefully we have an opportunity. I'm just looking at my time. I've been told I do have a little bit of time to be able to take some of your questions. So as I go through those, we'll just see what we have here. I have a question regarding does the fence hurt the bear if the bear touches it? The fence is meant to be a deterrent. So the majority of the time, the bear will sense the fence is electrified and won't actually ever touch the fence. If they do happen to touch it, it certainly gives them a little zap, but it doesn't hurt the bear certainly permanently. It's meant to be a deterrent so that it moves them off the fence and the premises immediately, and that's why we employ the electric fence. The next question is, what height is the fence, and do you shoot under and or over the wires? So the fence is generally in and around 4 to 5 feet. It may be higher or lower depending on snow conditions, actually. And generally, you shoot right through it. Sometimes, if you're lying on the ground, you're completely prone, you're able to shoot between the ground and the first wire. But with a few different tricks, we can walk a photographer through. You're able to shoot right through that fence, and those small little electric wires, they just will not even show up in the image. So luggage weight and restrictions excluding photo gear. So the luggage weight and restrictions are the restrictions of the commercial carrier, which is Comair from Winnipeg into Churchill, and we're happy to provide those details to you in an email if need be. I just don't know what they are specifically off the top of my head, but a couple of pieces with carry-on with a maximum weight there is a restriction on that, and we can get that information to you. Thanks for the great question. There is a question about the risk of people traveling up here will they see any wildlife? That's a great question. It's one that we get quite often, actually. The one thing we cannot do is certainly guarantee a wildlife encounter. Our goal, our belief is that we are going to the right place at the right time. This is, without a doubt, the perfect time of year to have a polar bear encounter. Is there you may not see a polar bear? Absolutely, but it's a very low risk and very high probability that you will see an animal. I think in all the years we've been running this trip, we've never had an encounter or a trip where we haven't actually seen a bear as part of the overall experience. Children minimum age. There is a minimum age that we ask on this trip. The minimum age is 12 for the scheduled trip, and we would want to talk to you and or your clients if there are children involved on this trip in around that age, just so we can be very clear to set expectations in regards to how the day trip, how the day transpires, what a day itinerary would be, so that the clients and the parents are comfortable with their children in that type of setting. A quick question about walking and any challenges in and around that. Well, we're certainly not at altitude. We are at sea level, so it's about as easy as it gets. We're at a higher latitude certainly, but this is at 0 feet above sea level. So the walks are just literally basically strolls along the shore. Very easy to do. We are booking 2018 right now if we cannot find a 2017 spot based on availability. So thanks very much for that question. Just a few more questions to go through, and we're almost up to the 30-minute mark, which is where I had hoped. So we'll get through those momentarily here. How to manage the temperature difference between inside and outside for the gear? Well, each of our cabins actually has a foyer that is not heated. So what that means is you can leave your photography equipment outside and not have the condensation build up once you bring your camera inside a warm, heated cabin. All that generally photographers do is take their batteries out to warm those up or to charge them, and they leave their lenses, they leave their camera bodies outside in the cold. But there's a few other tricks we can do at the end of the day so you can bring your gear in and be ready for that shot that may happen at any time. A question about lens recommendations. Seems that the smaller lens would be good due to the proximity of bears. Yeah, absolutely. So I've seen people shoot with 35 mil lenses. I've seen 600 millimeter lenses. The lens that I bring on this trip is my 300, and I don't even have a teleconverter. So there's a full range that one might have, and more often than not, some of the complaints from photographers will say, will be that the bears are just too close. So having that second body with a shorter, smaller lens like a 200 is a smart move. That's something that is of any concern whatsoever. Just a few more questions here, then we'll wrap up. I think our heli and sledding and out on the cabin trip. The helicopter is something we can consider for the cabin trip, the polar bear migration fly and safari. So that's certainly something that we can put on the table, but we won't be able to provide a snowmobiling experience. That's only going to be available at the private cabin. So thank you again so much for your time. I do believe that's the end of the questions there. If you do have anything else, please feel free to use that contact information to reach out to us. We're happy to hop on another call or just answer your questions with emails. And we hope to see you soon in the Canadian Arctic in October and November for one of our amazing autumn polar bear adventures. Take care. Thanks again. Bye-bye.